ADHD Rewired, Episode 23, Conversations from the ADDiva Conference, an interview with Linda Roggli. This is the show designed to help those of us who have really good intentions and a slightly wandering attention. Whether you have ADHD and you want to learn more about it, or you are looking for ways to organize your time, your things, or the many details of life so you can get more done, this show is for you. My name is Eric Tivers. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, coach, and consultant. We know that starting can be the hardest part, so let's get started. So I'm standing here talking to Linda Roggli. It is the Thursday pre-conference. What do you still have to do? Because you have a number of presentations that you are giving.
You're going to embarrass me on the air? Yes. Okay, so this is my ADDiva self. I have a survey for adults with ADHD who are over 40, and I really want to get it started, and I have it almost done, and it's not done, but I have lots of pieces of paper printed with the QR code so that people can go there, but we have to finish it up before it goes there. So that's number one. Number two, I have two more presentations to give, one tomorrow, one on Saturday, and neither one of them are ready, which is why I did not send Evelyn my handouts, because the handouts are not ready. But I do have my masks for the mini masks of ADHD. And then the other thing is that since I'm an exhibitor, I also have a slideshow that I'm showing at my booth, and I found that the slideshow that I thought I was going to edit has disappeared, so I have to start over.
Before we dive in to today's interview with the ADDiva, Linda Roggli, which is honestly one of my favorite interviews from the conference. They were all great, but this is one of the best ones. There are at least a few times during the interview that you are about to hear that there were tears in my eyes and chills kind of going through my body. We got into some pretty emotional, authentic, raw stuff. She describes how she was first diagnosed, was about 20 years ago. She shares with us some of those experiences of really trying to make peace with her diagnosis and really tear away what she describes as the masks of ADHD and really allowing herself to be true to who she really is. So we sat down on the, I think it was a Saturday after she had presented and I had presented. So that intro audio clip was actually on Thursday of the conference. So it was a few days after that, what you're about to hear. She talks a little bit about how some of her prior work experiences in TV and radio, and newspaper and advertising. She shares with us some of the things that she still struggles with. And she shared with me, and she didn't actually say this on, or maybe she did say it on the interview, but she has an audio book that's going to be available on audible.com. And it's not yet, but she does have this book out. But you can either go now and get a free download and a 30-day trial of an audiobook of your choice. And hopefully soon, maybe this will be the nudge that Linda needs to submit, because she has a 2,000 word, intro that she needs to give to Audible. And I totally understand how that could be a barrier to submitting something like that. I could definitely relate to something like that. Anyways, this episode is brought to you by audibletrial.com. No, it's brought to you by Audible. You can get a free trial at audibletrial.com/ADHD Rewired. ADHD Rewired listeners, do you want to increase your productivity and get more done? Do you have a specific goal or project that you want to start or want to finish? Does it seem like your to-do list keeps growing even though you feel busy? If you said yes, then join us for the ADHD Rewired online group coaching experience. This group is a 12-week online program where I will provide you with daily productivity coaching with the added power of group accountability. If you are listening during the week of August 11th through August 15th, 2014, and you have been waiting for me to announce the launch of this coaching and accountability group, I am offering a pre-launch special of only $5.99, and installment plans are available, but you have to act now to secure your place at this price. Go to ADHDrewired.com and click the iMac picture that says Group Registration. Check the show notes for a direct link and for a video that will cover this group in detail. Again, that's ADHDrewired.com. And prepare to get your ADHD rewired. And now for the interview with Linda Roggli. I am here once again with Linda Roggli. Hi, Linda. How are you?
You forgot to say the beautiful Linda Roggli.
The beautiful.
Oh, thank you so much.
The wonderful. The inspiring. The courageous.
Okay, that'll be enough. It's getting really deep. Yeah, exhausted is probably the correct word at this point, yes. But willing and very eager to talk to you and talk to your audience.
So, you just gave a presentation called Coming Out ADHD, something like that?
Yeah.
And usually every year, and I think I even mentioned this on a prior podcast, there's usually one presentation that I sit through that I'm caught off guard and I end up crying. You were the one this year.
That's actually a high honor because the truth is, as you know, I cried too, twice. And that's I think that when I touch that level in me, and probably the same applies for you, although I don't know for sure, it's because it's the truth. It really resonates so deeply with me, and I know that I live into that. Yeah.
You know, I think the things of wearing that mask and you described, and how you described how sometimes you need to just go to your room and check out from everything because it's exhausting. And I was just relating to so many of those things.
Absolutely. And, it just occurred to me that the actual title of the presentation was It's Exhausting Pretending to Be Normal Every Day. So we're both exhausted, but we're talking about it's the being out in public, even though I tend to be really an extrovert. And I like talking to people, and I do get energy, which is the definition of an extrovert.
Right.
But I must be on the cusp because it gets to a point where when I get away from it, I just have to just call into a little cave for a while and rejuvenate and reboot,
Recharge.
if you will. Yeah, it's almost like rebooting, and I need that. And when I'm in that place, I don't want anything. I almost even want to close the shades. I just don't want any more distraction. I don't want any stimulus. I just need to kind of regroup and be inside me so that I can, protect me and then be strong again so that I can go out there and be my lovely extroverted self again. It's a roller coaster.
Yeah, and so part of self-acceptance is being okay with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so where are you with that? Because you've been how long ago were you diagnosed?
I was diagnosed a long time ago, actually. It surprises me that I keep saying, oh, yeah, it's 12 years. Now it's 15 years. But actually, I was diagnosed almost 17, almost 20 years ago. I mean, Sarah Selden's book about women and ADHD came out. So you were diagnosed
when you were 1?
Thank you for that. That's so sweet of you. And this is radio, so you guys can't even tell whether that's true or not. That's accepted. Although I don't have this vocabulary, so I'm actually 2. So I was diagnosed when I was about 45, 46, somewhere in that vicinity, and that was perimenopause for me. So as I said in the presentation, I laughed at the psychologist who suggested that I had ADHD, and I immediately went right to the bookstore that he suggested to buy the book that he suggested, to look at it, to prove him wrong. Because, by God, that's for little kids, and that's for, people who can't sit still, and I could do all that, and blah, blah, blah. And I bought the book and was actually reading it at the stoplights on the way home. I was so taken with it and so convinced that it was actually talking about me. And
that was one of the moments that was getting me. That was my first. I didn't officially cry at that point, but I was getting watery-eyed because it was driven by distraction.
Driven to distraction.
That was my first book too, and I can remember being at my parents' house. I think it was in between semesters of school, sitting on the bed reading through that book, and at that point, I could probably count how many books I've actually read on one hand.
Yeah.
And just not being able to stop, and it was like I had to stop to dry my eyes,
Yeah.
because it was like, oh my, he's been spying on me because this book is about me.
Yeah. And I cried and I laughed, and yet there were parts of the book that didn't fit me. So I thought, well, maybe this guy's wrong after all. But then I'd read more, and maybe it is true, or maybe it isn't true. And then I think there's like 100 questions at the back or something, and most of them seemed like they really fit me, but I didn't want them to fit me because I'd been diagnosed with depression my entire life, and my mom had been diagnosed with depression, and I didn't want to be my mom. I wanted to be better, so I wasn't going to take antidepressants. I was going to be Mr. Strong, Miss Strong, and all that kind of good stuff. So to find out it was ADHD all that time didn't really feel real to me, and it took me 2 more diagnoses to actually believe that I actually had it. I had to go to 3 people, and it had to be a real test on paper with a computer, blah, blah, blah.
So it wasn't because you forgot the first 2 results?
No, it wasn't because I forgot them. It's just that I was denying, that river called denial. I didn't, and the truth is that it kept smacking me in the face. Once you, and I said this before, once you ring that bell, once you know ADHD is possible for adults, then when it comes up and smacks me in the face, I'm more aware that that's what it is. But as I say, when I finally got that diagnosis, it was like taking one piece of binary code in a computer, changing 1 0 out of those ones and zeros, and then everything behind it is different because I looked at it through the lens of ADHD, and everything forward is now going to be through that lens of ADHD. And I always say, I'm not passive aggressive. I'm not other oriented. I'm not bipolar. I'm none of those things that I was labeled after all those 20 years of therapy. What I am is ADHD, and you know what? It's just ADD. It won't kill you unless it does, because ADHD can be really serious. And I'm going to be very candid with your audience. I have been seriously suicidal. It just happened, and I had no idea at that point, because that was before my diagnosis, why that would be. So it's tough.
I think that the first interview that I actually did was with one of our listeners who sent me a really emotional email, basically sharing with us that he had attempted suicide more than once, and then he heard my podcast, and it was like an aha moment for him. And he was struggling with alcoholism, and now he's been dry. But I talked to him about a week or 2 ago, and it's been, I think it's at 4 months now. So it's just. So
I think you should probably keep doing these podcasts. Yeah, you think? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you how many listeners have made me cry, but by the emails. If you guys aren't getting by now, I tend to be a crier.
That shows your heart, and that's the authenticity that I was talking about in this session. Because if we are able to come out of our ADHD closets and take off some of that thick wall of I'm going to be the intellect, or I'm going to be
that was so powerful hearing that, because that's a coping strategy, an ego defense mechanism that I've used for a long time. That's the intellectualization of everything. And I was realizing that there were things that I intellectually am upset about, but I'm not feeling it, and it doesn't feel good. I talk about it like everything above your ears is all that brain stuff going, and then below your ears is the rest of your body. And when you can actually let yourself be in your body, because so many times with ADD, I'm kind of out there. I'm out, like, I'm just, so you guys can't see, but I'm actually doing my hands out in front of me in big circles. It's because I'm out there trying to talk to them, trying to be with them, instead of actually paying attention to what's going on for me. So for me to be able to do that has been an amazing situation. And I want to tell your listeners something that a wise therapist told me a long time ago, and you may tell your clients this as well. But that was, if I'm sitting down and I'm totally out of my body, if I can wake up to the fact that I'm like fried, then all I have to do is lean back against the chair and feel the chair against my back. And just that simple act of noticing my body is in space, and even if you're standing, you can feel your feet on the floor. The mindfulness.
But I don't call it mindfulness for me, because then it sounds like it's all woo-woo, and then I have to do something with it. Do you know? Does that make sense? Because all I needed was just that little instant reminder. I don't have to keep it up. I just have to, even when I do it, and I take a breath, suddenly my speech even slows down a little bit.
You can always look for your breath. It's always there.
Yeah, that's true. Thank goodness, until that very last one.
Speaking of aliens and ADHD,
where did we go?
I realized that I don't think I introduced your name. I don't think we said anything about who you actually are, because I'm sure that there are people who've never heard of you.
Oh, I doubt it. I'm pretty famous. And they do know I'm beautiful. So that's probably enough. But let me.
Internet famous, right?
Internet famous,
Right.
yeah, exactly. I do that at a webinar, so lots of people in the ADDa organization do know who I am. And I do webinars from the AD Diva Network. So let me just kind of rewind just a little bit. Linda Roggli actually rhymes with Linda Dogley. So people see my name and they don't know how to pronounce it. And it's not Roggli, it's Roggli, it's not Roggoli, and it's not Rogelli and all that kind of stuff. It's Linda Roggli, and that's how I remembered it when I met my husband.
I can so relate to that because I've been Eric Tivers for so long.
I'm sure you have. If you didn't have that E in there, it'd be okay.
But it rhymes with rivers.
That's true. That's true. There you go. So I found out I had ADD, and as I say, when I was in my mid-40s, and that was perimenopause for me. Mm-hmm. Now I know, then I did not, but now I know that when estrogen goes away, whether that's during your period or whether it's at menopause when it kind of goes bye-bye forever, estrogen sits on the receptor site of the neurotransmitters, and when those little neurotransmitters are going bam right over there really quickly, you take the estrogen out and they kind of wander around like,
slow down a bit because what you're saying is so important.
Okay, let me slow down. Lack of estrogen increases ADHD symptoms. That's the bottom line. And it happens monthly for a lot of women, so people think they have PMS and they can't pay attention, especially right before your period starts. It's just like gone. Your brain is gone. If you're taking a test on that day, if you're a student, you might want to ask for a different day simply because you're not connecting. And some psychiatrists actually increase medicine or change medication for women who are still having menstrual periods. For me, losing that estrogen, I actually had closed my advertising agency because I was just fried. I just couldn't do it anymore. And even though it's something I love doing because it was something different every day, it sounded like an ADD dream. I do something different every day. It's creative. I have, all these cool awards on the wall, all that kind of good stuff. But I would sit in the parking lot every day and I would cry. And then I would dry my tears and I would go upstairs and I would be the boss for the day. And then after the employees would leave, my day would start and I would stay there all night long. I even had a little foam rubber thing that I slept on at the office sometimes when we had things that were due the next day. Advertising is a very deadline-driven business. When I look back on my careers, I realize every single one of them was an ADD compensation. I worked in radio and TV. You have to be on the air at the right time or you're not going to be there. I like podcasts when you can actually put it on when you want to put it on. I worked in newspaper, so that's also a deadline. And I worked on the morning paper, and by George, I always slipped in just under the wire or just over it. And then I worked in advertising. So when I look at that and when I realized what I was doing, I thought, oh my gosh, that was one of those things I looked back on and said, oh, ADD. That was about my ADD. So being late is one of my big issues, and it's one of my husband's. It's one of the only things that my husband really gets upset about with me, especially when I cause us to miss airplanes to Spain.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah, twice.
This is why I neurotically get to the airport obscenely early.
Yeah, good for you.
Because I hate traveling because it's like one transition after another. It
is.
So as an accommodation for myself, I get to conferences a day early.
Good for you.
It's more expensive and I'm away from my family for a day longer, so that stinks. But it's an accommodation because my first CHAD conference 5 years ago, I landed, got into my room, and it was like go time, and I was like, never again.
Wow.
Never. It was like an outer body experience.
It sounds like we kind of circled back to what we talked about to begin with, was me needing some downtime. You needed downtime to actually kind of get back in your body and be your authentic self from the travel. And let's face it, conferences are very intense. There's lots of information coming at you, lots of people who want to talk to you, lots of people you want to talk to. So you're out there a lot and being able to go back and hear. So as I said, I miss a lot of conversations I'd really like to be having because during the breaks, I actually take a break. I actually go back to the room. I drink water. I lay down for a little bit, or maybe I check email, and that's probably more often the case than not.
Yesterday at 1 o'clock, I took a 30-minute power nap.
Good for
you. I was so glad that I did that.
Yeah, exactly. Again, taking such good care of yourself. So I love the fact that you're modeling that for your listeners.
I don't get to bed on time most nights.
Could we just take that acknowledgement? So I want to tell you a little bit.
Totally right, Linda. Thank you.
I want to tell you a little bit about the AD Diva Network. Because when I was diagnosed with ADHD and finally came to grips with the fact that, yes, I really do have it, what I realized is that there wasn't much out there for women. And Sari Solden's book was out and Terry Matlin's book was out, but there really wasn't very much else out there for women. And moreover, when I would read books about ADHD, they were full of pathology. They were full of the bad news about ADHD. There was a lot of research going on, and I understand that we needed to do that research and we needed to say that it was bad news so that the world would take it seriously. Because otherwise they could just dismiss it as saying, oh, that's just an excuse, or any of the other things that they dismiss ADD with. So what I realized is that I wanted to be one of the people that helped open the door to a more positive spin on ADHD. So I have T-shirts that take all of the negative pathology-driven words for ADHD, like impulsivity, and I translate them into positive words like spontaneity. Passion is part of what we do. Mm-hmm. Creativity is simply something that is negative, that's used in the negative world as, well, we're impulsive or we're hyper-focused or whatever. Well, but that's kind of creativity. You have to have that. That's problem-solving kinds of things. Yeah. So I knew I wanted to do it. I was lucky enough because it was early in the ADD kind of adult experience, because it's about 10 years ago, that the title ADDiva was still available. And it wasn't available as a .com, so it was available as a .net. So I came up with the fact that this was the ADDiva Network for women. And I wanted to focus on women who were my age, which was, I call them 40 and better. But now actually they're more like 50 and better, to tell you the truth, is what's happening. Because a lot of women now who are in their 40s were diagnosed in their 20s. Mm-hmm. I deal mostly with women and some men too who are diagnosed later in life, after childhood and after early adulthood, for instance. And so what I wanted to do, and Ned Hallowell was kind of out there with this positivity piece, and he was being ridiculed left and right for it. Mm-hmm. People said, that's ridiculous, hey, there's nothing good about ADHD, and we don't want to hear it. And I thought, ooh, this is a little dangerous territory for me. I was certainly not as well known as he was. Nobody knew who I was in those days. I had an email list of like 13, I think.
How many of those were family members?
Actually, none, because I didn't want to tell my family about my ADHD. So these were just the people who were working for me, actually. I was paying them to be on the list.
I don't think it's supposed to work that way.
I don't either. But fortunately, it's changed. Thank God. We have thousands of women on the ADDiva Network now.
Congratulations.
And thank you so much. I appreciate that. And I do believe that I've created a real tribe, because women actually wear their T-shirts. They call themselves ADDivas. And they do that because there's even though there's more information and more resources for women and for all adults with ADHD, there's still not always that positive focus. Mm-hmm. So I joined. I worked with Jack Canfield long ago, and one of the things that always interested me.
Soup guy, right?
Yeah, but that was way before Chicken Soup, and he said something on now this is how long ago it's been. It was tapes. It was cassettes that I put in the car that my kids said, no, we don't have to listen to that again, do we? I was in my second divorce. I married the same man twice, and I was divorced from him for the second time, and I knew something had to change. So I listened to his, I have to tell you the quick story. Is it all right if I tell you the quick story about this?
We like tangents, actually.
Okay, good. All right, perfect. Well, I was working at the newspaper at the time. I was a reporter, education reporter, and I was also the film critic, as a matter of fact. And I was pretty stressed out. I was a single mom, and I signed up for one of those $79 like skill path seminars, right? And it was stress and women. And I asked for the day off, and instead of taking the day off, I forgot, and I showed up at work. And they said, why are you here? And I said, I thought I was working. And they said, you're going to the stress and women section. So, of course, I got there 2 hours late. I did drive over. I walked in. Everyone else was sitting there. They had their friends with them. I walked in. I'm late. I'm embarrassed. I don't have anybody. I don't know anybody. Nobody goes to lunch with me. It was just one of those, ooh, I'm a bad person and nobody. And I deserve it, right? Because I forgot again. Again, this is before I was diagnosed with ADHD, long before. And when I got back in, I wasn't present in the room, because I was still kind of in that, I'm late, and oh my gosh, and who are these people?
I did this.
Yeah, exactly. So I was still kind of floating around the room in my brain. And finally in the afternoon, I was exhausted because so much information had been coming at me. But they were selling things at the back of the room, which is how they make their money. They don't make it on the $79, that's for sure. And Jack Canfield had something about success with, the road to success or something like that. And I bought it because I thought, well, if nothing else, at least I can get something out of this. And so I bought it, and that's what I listened to over and over until the tapes actually literally wore out.
I know you like it to listen and learn. Right now, you're probably in the car or working out or doing something else while you are listening to this podcast. Podcasts are great, but if you really want to dive in deep, you can read or listen to an audiobook, just like Linda listened to Jack Canfield's The Success Principle. You don't ever have to worry about tapes wearing out or CDs scratching. Just download Jack Canfield's book or Sari Solden's Women with ADD for free. Go to audibletrial.com/ADHD Rewired for your free 30-day trial and a free audiobook download. That's audibletrial.com/ADHD Rewired. Check show notes for the link or open your podcasting app that you're listening to this with right now, and you'll find show notes there with a clickable link. Again, that's audibletrial.com/ADHD Rewired. And now back to the interview with Linda Roggli.
And what I was getting to, coming all the way back around in my ADD-ish way,
I was really wondering, are you going to make it back?
We're getting back to it, is he said something that has always intrigued me, and that is that there was research that proved that positive thoughts could actually change your brain.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
And I had well, you say of course, but back in early 1990, that was not. Yeah, exactly. So I took that to heart as well as something I'd kind of stored in the back of my brain, and I wanted to know more. I wanted some facts. I'm not a researcher, but I do want some validity. I don't just want this to be this airy-fairy, oh, let's feel better, oh, yeah, we'll just make ourselves happy. So I went looking for it. So I joined the International Positive Psychology Association, even though I'm not a psychologist, and I went to their first international conference. I was blown away. It was so amazing. And it's everything that I do with coaching. So the ADDiva Network, my coaching, positive psychology, my women's retreats, which I hadn't mentioned, but my women's retreats, which are transformational retreats, all are pulled together by this string of, you know what? You are fine just the way you are. And this is true whether you have ADD or whether you have OCD or whether you're what we kind of almost nastily say neurotypical. You actually are okay. And I think one of the things I talked about in the presentation I just did was wearing kind of the mask, if you will, having that persona out there.
I love that you dressed up, by the way, and had someone behind the curtain actually.
I did. She was handing me my costumes.
And the whole time I was shared that with you, that I was just so glad that I wasn't that person that was so trapped in this small space handing you. I would have freaked out.
And it was dark and black, and I mean, it was like scary.
I would have wanted to know, what are people thinking? What are they doing? Like, get me out of here.
And she kept talking behind the curtain, and they could hear her, and then everybody loved it. It was perfect. It was perfect. But she kept handing me the wrong wig and the wrong this and the wrong that. So yes, I had pink dyed hair, and I had Hulk Hogan, and I had whatever I had. Anyway, it was the big green guy who's really angry. I had wonderful things. My favorite was the court jester, because I had got to wear a court jester, and that was the life of the party. But all of those are masks. All of those are personas that we put on to protect ourselves, and we develop different ones. We kind of sometimes trade them back and forth, but mine was on so tightly when I was a child and even into adulthood that I had to be perfect. I was smart. I knew where I was going. I was driven. The problem is that I kept falling down on the job, and I kept trying to hide it behind that mask. But unfortunately, I'll never forget at a conference I was, there were people who believed the mask, right? They bought the story, which was kind of still silly on their part, but I did a good job. I'm a very good actress. So they bought the story, and I had a meltdown. And one of them looked at me and said, I didn't know you were like this. And I just was crushed. I felt so, now she's finally seeing the real me kind of thing. But even that part even when that persona came down, that wasn't the real me. That was the damaged, I can't do it right me. The person that I came to know, the person that I'm so, it's a miracle that this person ever was allowed to emerge, that I gave her permission to emerge, is a woman who really trusts herself. And I think trust is a very, very difficult word for a lot of folks with ADHD. And that's one of the reasons I decided to do this, because after a while I realized that the things I was learning began to make a circle, and I was coming back to the same ideas, and all of a sudden it was like, at first it was like, I want to learn, and all of a sudden they began to make sense, and they began to be collective, and they began to be something that I could put my arms around. And so one day I was driving down the road near my house, and the thought just came to me, you know what? You actually have a little bit of wisdom. You've actually climbed above the canopy of trees, and you actually can see the sun, just a little peek of the sun. Even if I'm not all the way up to the top of the tree, even just being above that kind of incredible confusion and that jungle maze of where you can't see anything and slashing your way through, I could see a little bit of something up there. And I knew, but I knew that if I could do it, anyone could do it.
That's how I often feel too when I'm working with clients. Like, my tendencies are to be a disorganized mess that loses track of time and doesn't get anything done.
Yeah.
Those are my tendencies.
Yeah.
And I talked in my presentation today about that one of the challenges with ADHD is that we often try to go on autopilot, and we have the button, but it's not connected to anything.
I love that phrase. That's great. I like that.
So we have to be so intentional about everything that we really want to do and what we don't want to do.
That's right. That's right.
So it's, I mean, in my office in my clinic, I have 4 or 5 clocks and a bunch of timers, and they're all going. And I share with my clients, and the first time they walk into my office, you're going to see these timers, and they're going to be going off, and it's cueing me. And if it helps you, let me know. If it's distracting to you, let me know, and we'll work it out so it works for both of us.
Oh, that's good. That's cool. I did a presentation yesterday about Let's Fix It, which I kind of covered the whole gamut of treatment options for ADHD. But my favorite part of that is the gadget part. And
I wanted to ask you about that because I didn't realize that you were a gadget geek like me.
Oh my gosh, yes, I love gadgets, and I'm always finding new ones. That's why I'm wearing my new fitness band, which is tracking my sleep and it's tracking my steps. And I actually found an app that's I'm doing Weight Watchers because I really do. As beautiful as I am,
it works well.
I need to still lose a little weight and get into shape. And it will now let me scan food and give me all the points and all that kind. I mean, yeah, it's almost scary how cool things are, and then how destructive it is when they stop working. It makes me. I love technology, and nothing drives me crazier than when it fails. It drives me absolutely bananas.
When the actual technology fails.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I've been underneath a lot of desks in my life with cords, plugging them in and trying to make them work. And back in the old days, when I actually learned how to do computers, Microsoft Tech Support was free. I literally have been on the phone with Microsoft Tech Support back in the old days for 11 or 12 hours at a time.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, that was it. I would fry network cards. I would do this, and finally I said, I'm buying Apples. That was when the Apples finally had the power PCs. But nonetheless, the gadgets, when you mentioned clocks, it reminds me, I love atomic clocks. And I have clocks everywhere. I have clocks in the bathroom. I have 2 or 3 clocks everywhere.
That's what goes automatically based on...
And I don't have to reset them for daylight savings time.
Brilliant.
And they reset themselves when the light goes up. And they have, as long as I remember to replace the battery, even the alarm clocks to go off. But interestingly enough, I don't use alarm clocks. I don't like that nagging beep, 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 or even music. I hate alarm clocks.
Interesting, because one of the things I often encourage people to do is think about the things that we need those alarms, in a sense, for are things that we often have a negative association with.
That's true. That's very true.
So pairing positively associated sounds for our alarms, I think, is really, really important.
Yeah.
I use an app called Sleep Cycle that tracks my sleep.
I've used that too, but this is better.
So I've heard. And I have had my eye on one of those for the Fitbit for a long time. Because I should not have... What is that one?
This is Up 24.
Okay, it's
This is Jawbone.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have you used the other one?
No, I haven't, and I'm going to tell you why. Because they recalled them. There was some big thing going on with them. And I will tell you that I just heard this story. That woman had a Fitbit on. She was traveling. And she took it off because she thought it would make the thing alarm. And she's still alarmed. Her arm was still magnetized from the band. And I I don't think I'm going to... Yeah, I'm not kidding you. She still set the alarms off when she had taken it off of her arm. So I was grateful that I had bought Up instead of Fitbit. And, it may be something that they're just going to work on. They did have a recall of them. But somebody told me there's some new one. There's stuff coming out all the time. So there was something I was going to tell you about about the atomic clocks, but also about timers. I don't like timers all that much either.
Okay.
Because I don't like them. To me, there's just like a nagging voice, and I really, really, really don't like it. Now, I do set a few timers and I have a clock literally on my computer that's a big analog face, not digital, analog face, which makes it easier for me to set things. And it goes off every half hour and every hour, so it allows me to know the passage of time. But the one timer that I really like looks really old-fashioned. It's actually a Tibetan bell. And it sits on a piece of wood, and it frankly there's a timer, but there's also one to be used for your phone. You can actually plug it into your phone, so your phone actually sounds like a Tibetan bell. It actually has a ringer on a Tibetan bell.
That's my phone. That's my ringtone.
Is that right? Cool. Well, it's the same thing.
I don't like the phone.
Yeah, there you go.
I created a positive association with it.
Perfect. Yeah, exactly. So all I do is turn it, and the cool thing about this is that there's something about sacred geometry in terms of the way this goes. So let's say I set it for an hour. So in an hour, it'll go off, and I don't do anything about it. And I just leave it there. And in another 12 minutes, it'll go off again. And then the next time, it's half of that. In 6 more minutes, it'll go off. And then 3 more minutes, it goes off. And then at the very end, when it gets down to 1 minute, it just rings constantly. So I have no choice except to turn it off and get something.
On sleep cycle, that's how their intelligent alarm snooze function works.
That's exactly.
So you get, first thing is 12 minutes and half of that and half of that.
Yep. That's exactly right. The other thing I've always been interested in are the clocks that have the globe on top that gradually get brighter and brighter and brighter, so that you actually, because that melatonin issues, it's either shut down or being woken up. That's something I really have. I actually bought one, but in those bad old days, it was not a good way to. The alarm didn't work very well on this. I haven't tried it lately, but. I'm really shocked. I have to tell you that I'm not getting near as much sleep as I thought I was getting. And my husband has cystic fibrosis, so he coughs a lot during the night. And what I found is that when I'm in a hotel and he's not with me, I sleep much better. And I love my husband, don't get me wrong here, but it's because that sound wakes me up. I didn't realize until the chat conference about a year ago when a friend of mine, another psychologist actually, slept in the same twin king-size bed with me because her roommate was snoring. She couldn't get any sleep, and she was sleeping with me. And she said that every time my email was coming in, which would ding or something like that, she said every time that happened, you would wake up. And I didn't even know that.
Oh my
so
God.
Now I know to turn it off. But the information I'm getting from this band is just really cool. And how accurate it is, I have no idea. But it's better than what I was getting before, which was nothing. So anyway, I'm very much a gadget gal. And my favorite gadget that I wake up and hug every day is my brother labeler. Everything in my house and everything in my life is labeled.
Really?
Everything. Light switches, bottles. If you look at things I travel with, everything is labeled. This is shampoo, this is conditioner, this is moisturizer, all that kind of stuff. Well, that kind of makes sense because you put it in a different bottle. But we have everything labeled. I mean, on the spice cabinet, there is a thing that goes around, and on the outside of the little thing that rotates, it'll say salt and paprika, and so that when I get it out, I know exactly where to put it back.
So you don't have to where does it go again?
Exactly. And I don't.
I've labeled
I'm
things
about
very
stuff.
inconsistently, and it's great when I do.
Well, I will tell you that it takes time to do that. And I've spent really literally years doing it. But now everyone in my household knows where's the labeler. I mean, and now I have 6 of them. We've got to have one on every floor, one in every room almost, because it's. And I will tell you the reason why that's important. I mean, labeling is important, right? And people say, well, just use a piece of scotch, masking tape.
My handwriting.
Yeah, but my handwriting's so bad that I couldn't read it. I'm married to a doctor. His handwriting's better than mine. So when we go to the grocery store and I write down that we need pasta, he thinks we need paste. Because and here's the other interesting thing, and I haven't said this to anybody that I know of, but I've noticed it. When I write, I don't finish the end of the words. All right, Roggli, but I won't put the L-I on the end of it.
I don't finish sentences sometimes when I write.
Is that right? Oh, that's really amazing, isn't it?
Or I'll repeat a word sometimes even 3 times. I didn't even notice that I did that.
Well, and that's probably, and lots of people aren't able to read that when they see the word repeated and so forth and so on. The other thing I learned about dysgraphia, which is what there's actually a name for really bad handwriting like mine. There are several different versions of dysgraphia, and one of them didn't make any sense to me. Another one, that did make sense was people can write if they're really focused on it, but then the longer they write, the worse their handwriting gets, which is true for me. But the other one that was interesting to me was spatial. So if you're addressing an envelope and you get to the end and you don't have enough room, I don't have a good judgment of how long things are gonna be.
When I had to, when my wife and I got married and we had to send our thank you notes out.
Yeah.
I had to use a straight edge to say
That's great. But, at least you did it, though. And I think that's what's important for everybody to know, is that we all screw up. It doesn't make a difference whether we're professionals or not. We're not the leader head and shoulders above everybody else. We're just like you. And we may have some different coping mechanisms, and we may have access to different coping mechanisms. But you figured that out yourself, right? Nobody wrote that in a book and said, here's what you need to do to make sure that you stay straight lines. We're so creative, and we come up with those solutions, and which is one thing I love about ADHD. I told you that half of the people I talk to want to get rid of it, and half the people want to keep it, and I'm kind of on the fence. I love it sometimes, and I don't love it sometimes.
I'm the same way. I think that how hard certain things are and how much effort I have to put into certain things. Yeah. There are certainly times that I wish that I didn't have it.
Right.
there is still debate on whether or not creativity is or is not associated with it.
Yeah, it's supposed to be not necessarily.
Yeah, it's. I'm just not convinced either way yet. You know what I mean? But I think.
How do you measure creativity, though? That's the thing.
So I think about how I learned to play piano. Mm-hmm. So I was about 4 or 5 years old when I started playing, and I was in the basement of my house playing Nintendo, and I got bored of the Nintendo game, so I left on the Nintendo game to figure out the music for the Nintendo game.
Oh.
And so I played all by ear.
Wow.
And I never actually learned to read music, even though
Isn't something?
I took lessons a little bit, but I kind of faked being able to actually read it.
Sure.
My teacher would play it one time, and I knew how to play it.
I'm so glad you told me that, because I did not know the story of how you began to play. And I figured it was something along those lines. My uncle also has that ability to just sit down and just play any honky tonk kind of thing you want, and it's amazing what kind of. And I don't necessarily relate that to creativity, to be honest with you. I think that's an innate talent for you. But creativity, first of all, I asked the question: how do you measure creativity? And I'm sure some scientist has measured it. I'm sure there's some way to do that. But I think that the creativity moniker gets put on ADHD partly because we have to be we have to look for different ways around things, and that looks creative, but really we're just trying to take care of ourselves. We're just trying to keep ourselves upright most of the time, and sometimes that takes a lot of effort, and you go around your elbow to get to your knee and that kind of stuff. So I just wanted to tell you one quick thing though, because I think that your listeners might enjoy it, is that my husband's absolutely fabulous. He hasn't always been fabulous. He got there. We worked on that together. So I don't want to give him up, because now that he's here and now that I'm here, we want to keep it. But I always used to tell him that what I want on my tombstone is never a dull moment, because as far as I'm concerned, that kind of goes back to creativity, but it also has to do with, I just have energy. I go here, I go there. And probably my hyperactivity is probably stronger than many other women's hyperactivity at this stage in life.
You're hyperactive?
Well, a little, but actually I'm combined, because I need that downtime, and I can be just as inattentive.
I'm not sure if you picked up on the sarcasm.
Yeah. Oh, okay, if you think so. So
just from that you, I think, talk fast and energize your bunny.
Yes, that's true.
But I understand. For me, one of the things that I have to it's funny that
Are you going to let me tell the end of the story?
No, I'm not interrupting because I have ADHD.
Okay, well, let me at least tell the end of the story, because it's only one line. I want to put. I forgot what I was going to say. No. I wanted to say never a dull moment, right? Yes. And that was that. I said, and I told him that. And he said, no. What you're going to put on your tombstone, if you go before me, I'm going to write finally done. Because I never finish. I have t-shirts that say DLNE is my favorite 4-letter word. I just never get there.
That's going to make me cry again.
I actually thought it was kind of cute.
Cute makes me cry.
See, I needed to share that with you. So now you can interrupt all you want.
Oh my gosh. I'm just going to be present for a moment. Just kind of take
please.
that in.
Why don't we ask everyone to do that? If you could all just take a breath. If you're sitting, feel the back against your chair. If you're back against the chair, and let's just breathe for just one moment. I'm not sure I'm going to talk more slowly, but I'll try. I think I needed more than one breath.
It's funny. The fact that most of what I do professionally is I talk. I'm talking individually with clients or giving presentations, and I'm a mumbler.
Really?
I'm a mumbler.
Oh.
So I have to be very. And it's interesting when I think about slowing my speech down. I can think more clearly. That's
kind of the same way with me. I agree. So you have to be conscious of that. Is what I'm hearing. Yeah. You have to be really conscious.
And I think I've definitely gotten better. But it's so fun. I'm in the car with my wife, and her most frequent word to me is, "What?"
Oh, really? How about that?
And I think part of it is it's the modulation of tone, like not being loud enough, and I think as a whole, I think part of that has to do with almost a possibly like a low muscle tone. My son has some low muscle tone, and I'm seeing there's some similarities that I'm seeing.
Interesting.
And so being able to modulate, I don't have the greatest voice that projects. I'm working on it, and I know a lot of it has to do with breathing. And
yeah, it does.
Because I'm involved in Toastmasters now, which has been amazing.
Oh, cool. That's great.
Have you ever done?
No, actually, I actually am as a certified instructor for Speaking Circles International.
Okay.
Which is actually it's full presence communication, which is being completely present and then speaking, letting the words just bubble up rather than from the ears down. It's actually coming from the ears up. It's actually coming from the ears down, and it comes. Those words come out, and you can use it. You can use it even in real speeches. It's not just this hocus pocus woo woo kind of thing. But yeah, Toastmasters is really cool. So I'm really glad about that for you. But I have to tell you that when I was a kid, I was loud, and I was so shamed for that, and I was told over and over and over again, you're too loud, not just by teachers but by kids, that I got so soft that people they wouldn't be able to hear me either, but it wasn't my natural voice, but I suppressed it for so long that I lost it. I don't have that loudness anymore. It's hard for me to be loud. Isn't that? Yeah, that makes me sad about that little girl who didn't get to be fully expressed in the way that she needed to be because it didn't please anyone else.
I don't know if I ever shared this story with my listeners, but when I was in preschool, I came home from preschool one day and told my mom that I have a new name. My new name was Don't Eric.
Oh, honey.
And I get
that's like Down Boy for the dog.
And I suppose the way I said it, like it was just kind of a very matter of fact kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm sure. There was no emotion for you. You just thought that was it.
Yeah.
I got
they call
it.
me Don't Eric.
Oh, that's so sweet. And it's sad, too.
Yeah.
So all of us have that, whether you have ADHD or not. There's always something that you've done, somebody that's going to correct you for something that is more about them than it is about you.
Almost always, I think that is the case.
And so the problem, Eric, I think, is that when we get to be adults, we carry that with us. So I call it the monitor. I got turned onto it by a woman who was saying, you need to listen to the voice in your head. You can listen to your mind, right? It's monitor your mind, that kind of stuff. But for me, it was the monitor because it was the one that was saying, don't do this, don't stand too close. Oh, do they want to hear for you? Maybe they don't want it. You're standing too close. And it was monitoring me socially, especially, all the time. And when I woke up to that,
that's gotta be exhausting.
because it was two different levels of consciousness for me because I was doing it and I was telling myself to do it. And I'm not sure that it's completely gone, but I made an effort to listen to it because awareness, of course, is the first step toward dealing with this stuff. And when I realized how strident and how judgmental and how nasty this voice was being to me, I realized I didn't deserve it. I really don't deserve that. And what my friend said, my coach actually said to me, was that your mind mixes truth and lies because to make it even more powerful. So it would start with something that was true for me, but then twist it to mean something that was not true, and that made it more potent.
Piece.
Oh my gosh, yes, it was terrible. And I have to tell you that it kind of makes me sad because I think my mom and dad didn't realize that was going on for me, but I learned my lessons really, really well. I mean, I was a good girl, and I sat still as much as I possibly could sit still. I wanted to make people happy, so I was really good in school. I was in advanced classes. I didn't even know I was smart. They put me in advanced classes, and I'm like, what's this? I didn't know what that was, so it was nothing I wanted, just showed up for me. And so I didn't ever go like a lot of folks with ADHD. I didn't ever have that label of, you didn't try hard enough, you're stupid, you can't read, what's wrong with you? I didn't have those voices. I tried super hard. And for many, many, many years, school was the only place that I succeeded. I sure didn't succeed with socially. I certainly didn't have any friends. I didn't date until I was, like a sophomore in high school. I didn't get kissed until I was a junior in high school, for heaven's sake. So,
Take us there. Where was your first kiss?
My first kiss was I grew up on a farm, and my parents flew their own airplane, which they had a really bumper year. We lived in poverty when I was a kid, and then they had some really good years. And my dad went out one day and bought a 4-seater Cessna airplane. So he learned to fly, and we were at the very small little airport, and my mom learned to fly, and I actually soloed before I was 16. So I got my solo before I started driving. Yeah, but I didn't ever get my private pilot's license. And there was a guy out there, very tall, lanky guy, black hair. I'm always a sucker for black hair. And he asked me out. Nick asked me out. And I'd never really been out, to tell you the truth. And so we went out, and it was just very, I sat on one side of the car. He sat on the other side of the car. I'm
totally
sure.
Awkward.
But he was 5 years older than I was. So I thought, especially since I was so inexperienced, so like, what does he see in me and all that kind of good stuff. I was all nervous, and, I didn't want to eat dessert and all that kind of stuff. I wanted to impress him. And we get back to my house, and I had no idea, but my parents were watching.
Oh, no.
And so we get out of the car, and he comes around to my side of the car, and he leans over to kiss me, and my parents went through the ceiling the next day. He's pinning you against that car, blah, blah, blah. And here's the worst of it. He's really tall, and I'm pretty tall, too. I'm 5'7". But when he reached down to kiss me, he missed. So we ended up kissing a nose and a chin. So I thought, what's so exciting about this? And I didn't have enough self-confidence to say, let's try again. I was so embarrassed, I just ran away. If my parents only knew, there was nothing too sexual about that.
That's fantastic.
And there was the beginning of my awkwardness in relationships. Yes, I think that's where it started.
I think that most of my listeners can relate to those moments of awkwardness. I know I've had plenty of those.
And, feeling like everybody else understands it. And, like, I actually thought they knew the secret. And nobody told me. And I kept trying to find out what the secret was, especially with other girlfriends, just to be friends with me. And this makes me sad, too, but I would watch them, which is one of the reasons that when I was in therapy, therapists would say that you're other-directed. Because I was other-directed, but that was a coping mechanism for my ADHD. I would watch them, and then I would go home and I would imitate them in the mirror to see if I could laugh the way they did or hold my head the way they did. And when I was 9 or 10 years old, I would lay under my quilt, which is a chenille bedspread with a ballerina in the middle of it. It was beautiful. I wanted to be a ballerina when I was a little girl, even though I was pretty chubby and wasn't really a ballerina body. I would lay there, and this even hurts me to even talk about it. But, okay, so maybe I'm going to cry. I would actually rehearse conversations with people. And I would think about what I would say, and then I'd project what they would say. And then I would think what I would say, and then I'd project. And if I got down the road and suddenly I realized it was going to go badly, I would back up and I would have that conversation again, and I would try to say the right thing so that they wouldn't be upset with me and that they would still be friends with me. It reminds me of my poor little son who's albino, and he couldn't see very well, and he would take pennies to school and give pennies to people if they would be his friend. Yeah. So we all have those kind of wounds, but just bringing it back right now. This won't show up
on audio, but I got to give you a hug right now.
Okay, thank you. I don't want to hurt your earbud there, sweetie.
I can absolutely sit here and talk to you all day.
I know, but we have to go.
I know, we do.
And you know what? I just want to tell your audience that they are so lucky to have a person like you in their lives, which is why I know that your podcast is going to be wildly successful as you do more and more and more of them. And you're inspiring me to do a podcast, too, because, of course, I work specifically with women, and I do webinars and do all that kind of stuff. But having come from a background of radio and TV, I should be doing this. I love doing this. So now what I have to do is I have to go wash my hair so that I can moderate the panel between Sari Selden, between Ned Hallowell, and between Tom Brown. And I just want to say to you and to the rest of the audience that about 8 years ago I came to my first conference for ADHD, and a friend whom I met and is now here, and she presented today too, we roomed together, and I was so glad to have somebody to talk to. And we were both kind of needy at that moment, to tell you the truth, so we clung to each other. And we both said, one of these days, we are going to be the people who are presenting in that conference. And do you know that today both of us presented?
Awesome.
And Sari Selden is on a pedestal she's on, and I get to sit not only to know who she is and for her to know and say hello to me, but I get to sit there on the same stage with her. So I just feel so incredibly, I don't like the word blessed, but I just feel like my life, I've created my life in a way that I never expected. And I am grateful. I am grateful. And yet I don't say that with oh, thank God, all these things just fell into my lap, because I created that. Just as your audience can create those wonderful things in their lives, even if things look like they're going really badly. I would never be the coach I am today if I hadn't had all that, SHI, going on in my life. I would not be the person. I would not be tearful with these things with you, nor would I be my authentic self. So thank you for allowing me to share with you, and thank you for allowing me to be here.
Well, thank you for spending the time and sitting with me. And I'm sure this will be one of many more conversations we'll have. So. Probably not all of them recorded.
You know all my secrets now.
Oh, my gosh.
Not really.
There's
that one, and then there's another one. Let's see. Oh, gosh, there's probably 5 more.
I have plenty of room on the audio. So.
Not today, baby.
So thank you so much.
Come visit the ADDiva Network if you happen to be in that.
Yeah. How can people reach you and find yourself?
ADDiva. It's 2 Ds, not 3. And it's ADDiva.net, or you can go to the retreat site, which is ADDivaretreats.com. Everything will take you there. But my book is Confessions of an AD Diva, Midlife in the Nonlinear Lane. And I think that I wrote it specifically so that people would finish it. And it's written for women, of course, because it talks about hormones.
Pages.
It's got lots of pictures. It's got lots of white space, and it's got big type because people like me need big type. And people say that it's the first book they've ever finished, and they laugh and they cry. And I get 5-star reviews on Amazon, and it won first prize in the Indie Book Awards 2 years ago.
And you said it's going to be on Audible soon,
It is going to be on Audible. Yes, as soon as I get the 2,000-word description done, it's all set up, it's all recorded, ready to go, and I'm reading it, of course, because that's my thing. So
excellent. And you can get a free trial, a 30-day trial, and you can download this book for free at audibletrial.com/ADHD Rewired.
There you go. Perfect. Yay.
Linda, thank you so much.
Thank you. Love you.
ADHD Rewired listeners, you have just listened to another episode of ADHD Rewired. Conversations from the ADDA conference. We have a few more interviews that you will be hearing over the next couple weeks. Next week, I will be sharing the interview that I had with Terry Matlin. As I listen to these interviews, I keep thinking that, this is one of my favorite ones. They're all really great. We actually talk about parenting with ADHD and talk a bit about overwhelm. So I would encourage you to check out next week's episode. Please, if you have not done so already, go onto iTunes or Stitcher. Don't forget to click subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and leave a rating and review. It really helps because it helps the algorithms for how people find this podcast. Don't forget, this is the pre-launch phase right now of the ADHD Rewired Coaching and Accountability Group. While it is possible that this is long over by the time you listen to this, if you are listening between the weeks of August 11th through August 15th, this is pre-launch week, and I am offering this group, a 12-week productivity group, online at a discount. So go to ADHDrewired.com and click on the iMac icon that says registration or something like that. I'm not looking at it right now, so I don't quite remember what it says. Coming back from that tangent, I'd like to know what you've been thinking about ADHD Rewired now that I've been doing more interviews. Are there things that you would like to hear that I haven't been covering? Go on the Facebook page or our community group and leave your comments. Or you can go to my website, ADHDrewired.com, and leave comments under each episode's show notes. You can also sign up for my email newsletter that I promise I will send it out to you much less than I actually intend on. So don't worry about me sending spam to your email inbox. Chances are you're not listening anymore because we're 57.5 minutes into this episode. I know these interviews have been longer, but the cool thing about podcasts is you can push pause. Thanks again to Linda Roggli. This is Eric Tivers reminding you, success is a direction. When you fail, make sure you fail forward. Until next time.